Minor chords, the chord quality in jazz that allows for some of the most freedom, second only to the dominant chord. Minor chords always have a flat third, and is paired with sometimes a 6 like the C minor 6, or with a lowered 7th like C minor 7, or even a major 7 like C minor major 7, and several more. In this video, we're going to go over 5 ways to absolutely devour minor chords within our solos, with each concept becoming increasingly more challenging. Everything we go over today is found in our resource here at Jazz Lesson Videos, entitled 75 Phrases on Minor Progressions. Fun fact, this is actually the very first resource that I bought from JLV several years before I even joined the team. It's truly a great resource containing 75 diverse phrases over minor progressions in all 12 keys. It's even got backing tracks and recordings of all the phrases by the writer, Chad LB. If you'd like to download this resource, you can find the link in the description below and use the code MINOR5 for $5 off. Alright, so let's get into the first way to nail some minor chords. This way is to play purely diatonic, meaning every single note choice will come directly from the chord scale. If your minor chord is functioning as a 2 chord, such as in a major 2-5-1, the standard choice for this minor chord is the Dorian scale. However, if your minor chord is functioning as a 1 chord, such as the 1 in a minor 2-5-1, you can choose a variety of minor scales. The most popular choices are, again, the Dorian scale, but also the melodic minor scale, which is my personal favorite. Let's take a listen to this phrase from the 75 Phrases on Minor Progressions book that showcases diatonic playing using the Dorian scale. Nice, so what's going on here? So this progression is a 1 minor 7 to a flat 6 dominant 7 back to a 1 minor 7. This is a progression you'll come across in various jazz standards. And if you're ever in a situation where you need to vamp on a minor 7 chord for an extended duration, you could actually imply this chord as a substitution within your minor vamp solo for some extra colors. Quickly, let's hear this line again over just an F minor 7 chord. It still completely works, and it makes your 1 chord solo over a minor chord a little more interesting. Anyway, as we can see in this first F minor 7 chord, every single note is diatonic to the F Dorian scale. We're going to start on the flat third, A flat, and play this A flat melodic cell, 1, 2, 3, 5. Then we're going to jump up to the 9 of this chord and walk down the F Dorian scale. Now the theme of this entire line is to play diatonic. So when we arrive to the D flat dominant 7 chord, everything is still completely diatonic, this time to D flat mixolydian. So these first 4 notes of this chord is going to be a 4-note diatonic enclosure around this third. Then we're going to play a permutation of this chord arpeggio. 3, 5, root, and flat 7. This is going to allow us to smoothly voice lead with a half-step interval up to the 5th of our F minor 7 chord. And we continue to play completely diatonic back into the F Dorian scale. We're going to play a 1, 2, 3, 5 shape, this time in F minor, and it's going to be backwards, so we're descending down this shape. And the last 6 notes here is classic jazz vocabulary. This is the melody of Honeysuckle Rose. Let's hear all this again, a little slower. Great, so that was an example of diatonic playing over a minor 7 chord using the Dorian scale. Now let's take a look at another example from the book of diatonic playing over a minor chord, but this time using the melodic minor scale. Nice, let's see what's going on here. This is taking place over a minor 2-5-1 chord progression. For the 2 chord, we're playing diatonic to D Locrian. For the 5 chord, we're playing diatonic to G Phrygian dominant. And then for our 1 minor 7 chord, we're playing diatonic to C melodic minor. Again, when your minor 7 chord is functioning as a 1 chord, this 7 is really interchangeable. We can instead play the major 7, which the C melodic minor scale has, and is still going to sound great over this chord. It's acting as the leading tone, and leading tones want to pull towards back to the root. So this particular line starts off with a diatonic enclosure around the flat third, and then from here we're going to ascend the E flat major 7 flat 5 shape. You could also just think of this as an E flat major 7 sharp 11. This gives you a nice Lydian sound from E flat, which fits perfectly nicely within this chord, giving you the flat third, the fifth, the sixth, and the ninth. Now these next 4 notes is a long decoration around the root, which we target on this downbeat here. This B natural right before the target confirms that this is the C melodic minor scale. We play this 2-note diatonic enclosure around the root, and we're going to drop down to the 5th. Then we'll play a 2-note diatonic enclosure around the 3rd, and end off back on the root. Let's hear all this again. Awesome, so those were a couple examples of diatonic playing. Let's move on to the second way that we can absolutely demolish minor chords within our solos. This is by incorporating melodic chromaticism using non-diatonic notes through approach notes and enclosures. Let's listen, then break down this phrase from the book that clearly demonstrates this. Cool, let's see what's happening here. This is a minor 2-5-1 chord progression in G minor this time. This entire line uses chromaticism, such as in this A half diminished chord here. This B natural is acting as a chromatic approach tone to the flat third C of this chord. Then we're going to ascend the A Locrian scale and arrive to the D7 flat 9. The first 4 notes in this chord are diatonic to D Phrygian dominant until we arrive to this F natural here, which is acting as another chromatic approach tone to target the F sharp, the 3rd of this chord. Now we're going to jump up to the flat 9 and dip down to the flat 7th. Now the C sharp is another chromatic approach tone to target the 5th of our G minor chord. After we land on this D, we're going to dip down to a G sharp, which is yet another non-diatonic note, the chromatic approach tone to the 9th of this chord. Then we skip up to the 11 and walk to the flat 3rd with this chromatic passing tone in between, this B natural. Now we'll dip down to the 5th and play yet another chromatic passing tone between the 5th and the 6th, this D sharp. And finally this line ends on the root, slightly delaying it with just an 8th note, embellishing it with this 9th first. Let's hear all this one more time, a little slower. Amazing. Now that we've established the use of melodic chromaticism, let's go ahead and dive into the fun stuff. The third way that we can destroy minor chords is through melodic cells. A melodic cell is a small melodic fragment, usually approximating 4 notes, that we can transpose rapidly to give us some compelling dissonance. Here's an example of a melodic cell. This cell can be played over a G dominant 7 chord. We start on the root, descend with a chromatic passing tone to the flat 7th, and return to the root. This could also work over a G minor 7 chord. This could also work in a D minor 7 chord, giving us the 11th, a passing tone to the flat 3rd, and back to the 11th. And it could work over many other things like A altered, giving us a flat 7, walking down to the flat 6, returning back to the flat 7th. Or an F major 7 chord, starting us on the 9th, walking us down to the root, returning back to the 9th. As you can see, there's a lot of possible choices. So now let's hear this cell being utilized in a minor progression through this phrase from the resource. Whoa, let's break this down. After this chromatic approach to the root and a dip up to the 4th, we can see the first instance of this melodic cell in the second half of our E half diminished chord. It's going to start us on the flat 3rd, chromatically walk down to the flat 9th, which is diatonic to this E Locrian scale, and we're going to return back up to the flat 3rd. Now we're going to play this cell again on our A7 flat 9 chord, starting on A7 6. We're going to play the 6, chromatically walk down to the 5th, and return up to the 6th. Now this ascending chord is a beautiful permutation of 1, 2, 3, 5. In B major, we'll play 3, 5, 1, 2. And it being in B major gives us the sharp 4, 6, 2, and 1. This is a beautiful color for this chord. Anyway, we smoothly voice lead onto the flat 7 of D minor 7, and we played this melodic cell again, this time in C. It's going to give us the flat 7, and we'll walk down to the flat 6 and walk back up. This flat 6 gives us a D Aeolian sound, aka the D natural minor. This is not the usual target, but it's still a nice color nonetheless that you can absolutely work with. After this melodic cell, we'll go to the 5 and dip down to the root, and we'll ascend up the D minor triad. Then we'll step down to the 5th and play the melodic cell again, this time in G. We're going to play G, which is the 4th of this chord, chromatically walk down to the flat 3rd, and return back up to G. And we'll end off on the root, again slightly delayed by this 8th note 9 first. Let's hear this entire phrase one more time. Fantastic. So far we've talked about diatonic playing, approach notes and enclosures, and melodic cells. It's time to move on to the 4th way to annihilate minor 7 chords within our solos, pentatonic shifting. This is where we'll smoothly switch to non-diatonic tonalities and resolve ourselves back in, all using the pentatonic scale. We actually just posted an entire video on this concept if you want to search the channel for an extra deep dive on this concept. But anyway, let's take a listen to this phrase from this 75 Phrases on Minor Progressions resource that demonstrates pentatonic shifting. Pretty cool. Let's break this one down. This takes place over a 1 minor 7 to a flat 6 dominant 7 chord progression. The first measure is entirely E minor pentatonic, diatonic to this E minor 7 chord. Now for our C dominant 7 chord, we're going to play a B flat minor pentatonic sound. The reason why is because we want to fulfill a pentatonic shifting technique that Chad Albede coins as pentatonic shifting to the nearest degree. What that simply is when we voice lead to a different pentatonic scale using a half step interval. That's exactly what happens here. Take a look at the final note of the E minor 7 chord, the E. Now look at the very first note of our C7 chord, F. This interval is a half step interval. When this happens, you have 4 available minor pentatonic scales that you could choose from that contains this note, F. We could do B flat minor pentatonic like we have here, as F is the 5th of B flat minor pentatonic. We could do F minor pentatonic, which F is the root of F minor pentatonic. We could do C minor pentatonic, which F is the 4th of C minor pentatonic. Or we could do D minor pentatonic, which F is the flat 3rd of D minor pentatonic. In this case, Chad goes with the B flat minor pentatonic, and ultimately it will leave you with a lot of non-diatonic notes. This creates a lot of dissonance and tension, which sets us up to create the satisfying contrast of the resolution, which simply means when you dive back into tonality, which we do here in the beginning of this next E minor 7 chord. We voice lead with another half step interval back into the E minor pentatonic sound, starting on its 4th. On the second half of the measure, we're going to stray away from the E minor pentatonic sound and just play the upper structure from the 5th, but backwards. So essentially, this is a descending B minor 7 arpeggio, 7, 5, flat 3, 1. But it'll give you the E minor 7s, 4, 9, flat 7, and 5. Anyway, we resolve back on to the root of E minor 7, which is also the 3rd of this implied flat 6 dominant 7 chord, the C7. Let's hear all this one more time slowly. Wonderful. Now we can move on to the 5th and final way of how to absolutely obliterate minor 7 chords. This is through triad pairs and or hexatonics. Triad pairs are when you alternate between 2 different triads to create one colorful sound. Hexatonics are when you put all 6 notes of that triad pair in their closest intervals, resulting in a 6-note scale. Let's take a listen to this phrase from the book that clearly showcases the use of triad pairs through a minor progression. Wow, let's analyze this one. This takes place over the same progression, 1 minor 7 to flat 6 dominant 7. So we can see here on our first C minor 7 chord, we've got two triads, the C minor triad and the B major triad. C minor gives us the 1, flat 3rd, and 5th. The B major triad gives us the flat 7, 9, and 11. The first triad in this phrase plays it as a 4-note figure, 1, 3, 5, 3. And then for the B major triad, we're going to play this same shape but just backwards, 5, 3, 1, 3. Now for the A7 chord, we're going to grab a different triad pair. This is going to be two major triads a whole step apart. B flat major and A flat major. This is completely non-diatonic as we got a major 7 from this A flat. But that's okay, just like with pentatonic shifting, if you create dissonance and then swiftly resolve shortly after, really any dissonance can sound good. So for this phrase, we're going to play the 5, 3, 5 root of B flat. And then for the A flat triad, we're going to play the root 3rd, 5th, and 3rd. Then we resolve back into the tonality of C minor 7, voice leading up with a half-step interval to the root. For the remainder of this phrase, we're just going to play with some nice melodic chromaticism. Playing the root, dip down to the 5th, play an iteration of the C minor bebop scale, which is also the 5th mode of the F sharp dominant bebop scale. This is going to give us a passing tone between the F sharp and the E, allowing us to have this 3rd of this minor 7 chord on a downbeat. Now we're going to play an E major pivot arpeggio, where we take the last 3 notes of a 7 chord arpeggio and drop them all down an octave. And then for the final measure, implying that this is still a C minor 7 chord, we're going to play the root in the 6th. But implying that this is an A7 chord, we're going to play the 3rd in the flat 9. Let's hear all this one more time slowly. Incredible. Well, everyone, that concludes today's video. I hope you enjoyed these 5 ways to absolutely crush minor chords in your solos. Again, if you'd like to download this resource, 75 phrases over minor progressions, you can find the link in the description below, and don't forget that you can use the code MINOR5 for $5 off. If this video helped, please consider leaving a like and subscribe below, as it really helps this channel grow. Alrighty, thank you everybody for watching. I'll see you all next time.